He clearly remembers the moment he realized something wasn't right. It wasn't sudden. It didn't come with an obvious sign, an alarm, a clear warning. It was something completely different. Silent. An unexpected hesitation. A doubt that appeared where certainty used to live. A subtle loss of confidence he couldn't explain. And the more he tried to understand it, the more it slipped through his fingers. And the hardest part of all, it was something he didn't feel comfortable sharing, not with friends, not with family, not, at certain moments, even with himself. Because for many men, this kind of situation goes far beyond the physical. It touches a deeper layer, one that affects how a man sees himself, how he feels in front of another person, how he positions himself in the world. It's not an exaggeration to say that for many, it's one of the most silently devastating experiences that exists, precisely because it happens in silence, without anyone noticing. And that's why most men choose not to talk about it. They swallow the discomfort. They pretend everything is fine. They avoid situations that might expose what they're trying to hide. And they keep living like that, diminished on the inside, while trying to appear whole on the outside. He did that too for a while. But there came a point where the silence started costing too much. Because when you ignore a signal your body sends, it doesn't disappear. It transforms. It deepens. It starts showing up in other places. In the lack of energy, in the irritability, in the constant feeling that something is wrong, but without being able to name exactly what. And that's the point where he decided to stop ignoring it. It wasn't a heroic decision. It wasn't a dramatic turning point. It was something much simpler. He got tired. Tired of doubting himself. Tired of waking up already feeling behind. Tired of carrying something he didn't need to carry alone. And so he began to pay attention, not just to what was happening externally, but to the signals his own body had been trying to send for years. The constant stress he ignored, as if stress were simply part of the price of being an adult, of having responsibilities, of being alive in an accelerated world. The poor quality sleep he had come to consider normal, that fragmented, shallow sleep that doesn't truly rest, that leaves a person waking up already exhausted. The rushed meals, eaten without awareness, consuming whatever was available at the wrong time without thinking about what that was doing to his body over time. Each of these factors in isolation seems small, but when he started looking at all of them together, everything began connecting in a way that could no longer be ignored. And it was in that moment that he had the realization that changed everything. This wasn't just about performance. It was about circulation, about the blood flow that moves through every part of the body, about the health of the blood vessels, about the organism's ability to transport oxygen, nutrients, hormones to where they're needed, when they're needed, about how the body functions at its most fundamental level. Because there is a truth that modern medicine confirms and that traditional medicine has known for centuries. Without good circulation, nothing works the way it should. The heart works harder, muscles recover more slowly, the mind becomes cloudier, energy drops, and performance in any area of life begins to decline. Not suddenly, gradually, silently, the same way it had arrived. This isn't theory. It's basic physiology. And when he understood that, everything shifted in perspective, because it stopped being a mysterious problem without explanation and became something understandable, something that had a cause, and therefore something that could have a solution. Determined to understand better, he dove into research. And it's important to say here, he wasn't looking for miracles. He wasn't searching for quick fixes, magic formulas, promises that sounded too good to be true. He had been down that road before and knew it leads nowhere. What he wanted was something real, something evidence-based, something that had both the backing of modern science and the weight of tradition. Because when those two worlds point in the same direction, there's something there that deserves attention. And it was in that process of research, reading studies, reviewing literature, observing patterns that appeared repeatedly across different cultures and contexts, that something surprisingly simple began to emerge. Garlic. At first, he almost dismissed the idea. Garlic? That common ingredient, present in virtually every kitchen in the world, found in any grocery store, at a negligible cost. How could that be connected to something as important as circulation and physical performance? It seemed too simplistic, too basic, too accessible to be taken seriously. But he had learned, throughout this journey, that the most common mistake people make is dismissing the simple, precisely because it seems simple. As if value and complexity were the same thing, as if something only truly worked if it was difficult, expensive, or complicated. And so he decided not to dismiss it. He decided to investigate properly. What he found was remarkable. Garlic contains a molecule called allicin, and this is where things get scientifically interesting. Allicin is an organosulfur compound that forms when garlic is cut or crushed. It's responsible for the characteristic smell, but also for a large part of garlic's bioactive properties. And when this compound interacts with the body, a series of processes begins to unfold. Studies show that allicin may contribute to the relaxation of blood vessels, meaning blood flows with less resistance, reaching tissues more efficiently. This effect is especially relevant for cardiovascular health, but its implications extend far beyond the heart. Think about it this way. Every tissue in the body depends on an adequate blood supply to function. Muscles to contract and recover, the brain to think clearly, organs to perform their functions, and yes, those specific functions that depend on adequate blood flow to specific regions of the body. Beyond allicin, garlic contains other compounds with anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Oxidative stress, which is essentially cell damage caused by free radicals, is one of the greatest enemies of vascular health. And garlic, with its antioxidant compounds, can help combat that process. There is also evidence suggesting garlic may contribute to blood pressure regulation. Elevated blood pressure is one of the biggest risk factors for circulatory problems, and managing that factor with something as simple and accessible as garlic is, at the very least, something that deserves serious consideration. Suddenly, it was no longer just a common kitchen ingredient. It became an important piece of a much larger puzzle, an element that had been present throughout the entire history of humanity, in traditional recipes, in popular health practices, in the kitchens of grandmothers and great-grandmothers, not by accident, but because people recognized, across generations, that it made a difference. Modern science is only now beginning to understand the why behind what tradition has known for centuries. And this is where everything becomes even more interesting, because it's not enough to simply consume garlic. It's not enough to toss a clove of garlic into a meal and wait for extraordinary results. The question goes deeper than that. It's about how it's used. The state in which it's consumed, raw, cooked, crushed, whole. The moment it's consumed in relation to the body's natural cycle, and how that aligns with the biological rhythms that govern how the organism functions. And that detail, the timing, is where many people go wrong, because the body is not static. It operates in cycles. During the day, the body is in active mode, processing, reacting, consuming energy. Metabolism works one way, hormones behave another, and the processes of nutrient absorption and utilization are different from what happens at night. At night, something fundamental changes. When the body enters a state of rest, it doesn't simply stop. It shifts modes. It moves from active processing to deep recovery. This is when hormonal regulation occurs, including hormones directly linked to physical performance and male vitality. This is when cellular repair happens. This is when blood vessels relax and restore themselves. This is when the body performs the maintenance it cannot perform during the day. It is the most important period for recovery, and also the period during which providing the right elements can generate a disproportionate impact. It was with this understanding that he began testing a simple routine before sleep. It wasn't elaborate. It didn't require equipment, expensive formulas, or radical lifestyle changes. It was a consistent routine based on principles that made biological sense, and one he committed to maintaining long enough to observe what would happen. Because another common mistake is expecting results in 2 or 3 days. The body doesn't work that way. Real changes, changes that happen at the cellular, vascular, hormonal level, take weeks to accumulate. They're silent at first, and then suddenly they become undeniable. But he didn't do this randomly. He followed a specific method, combining garlic with other supporting elements, compounds that amplified its effects, that worked in synergy with the body, that didn't compete with each other, but complemented one another. We've left a practical guide in the first link in the description for you to access quickly. Click and see. The first few weeks were subtle. He noticed small things. He slept a little better. He woke up feeling slightly more rested. His energy throughout the day seemed more stable. Fewer sharp peaks and crashes, more consistency. But as the weeks passed, the changes began to become more evident. The circulation, which he now understood as the foundation of everything, seemed to improve. He felt more present, more responsive, with greater willingness for the things that previously seemed to demand disproportionate effort. And then, gradually, that specific area that had motivated the entire journey began to respond as well. What surprised him most wasn't just the physical response. It was the return of confidence. There's something that people who have never gone through this might not fully understand. When that kind of confidence disappears, it leaves an empty space that affects everything around it. The way a person relates to others, the way he communicates, the way he moves through the world. And when it starts to return, it's not just the body that changes. It's the presence, the gaze, the way a person occupies their own space, the feeling of being in control again, of no longer doubting himself before he even begins, of noticing that his body was responding the way he knew it should. As time passed, he realized something even deeper. This was not a temporary solution. It wasn't a trick, a shortcut, something that would work for a while and then stop. It was about consistency, about providing the body, daily, with what it needs to function at its best, about respecting biological rhythms instead of fighting against them, about building a foundation, gradual, solid, real, upon which performance could rest. And that, he realized, was completely different from everything he had tried before. Because the truth is that most people look for solutions in the wrong place. They seek extremes when the body needs consistency. They ignore the essential while chasing the elaborate. And they repeatedly overlook what has always been within reach because it seems too simple to be relevant. Garlic is not a miracle. He never claimed it was. But it is a powerful, scientifically grounded element, used for millennia for reasons that modern science is only now beginning to understand in depth. And when used in the right way, at the right moment, with the right elements alongside, it can be the missing piece. And to anyone watching right now who identifies with that feeling, with that silent doubt that one carries without being able to name it, it's important to know you are not alone. More men than you can imagine are in that same place, feeling the same thing, carrying it in silence, and many of them have found, through paths similar to this one, a way forward, a path based on knowledge, on consistency, on alignment with one's own body, without depending on extreme solutions, without unnecessary risks, without promises that don't hold up. There is a way forward, and it begins with understanding what the body truly needs. We've left a practical guide in the first link in the description for you to access quickly. Click and see. At the end of that journey, he didn't just notice changes. He came to understand them. He understood why his body was improving. He understood the mechanism behind each change. And that made all the difference, because when you understand the process, you can sustain the result. You no longer depend on luck or circumstance. You have knowledge, and knowledge applied with consistency produces results that last. For the first time in a long time, he recovered a feeling he believed he had lost. Not just the performance, but the clarity, the confidence, the sense that his body is on his side, not working against him. This is not about promises. It's about possibilities, about rediscovering the potential of one's own body when you begin working in its favor, rather than ignoring it or demanding from it without giving anything in return. And if this story also feels familiar, if there's something in these words that resonates, that touches something you recognize, then this may be just the beginning. Because there is still so much more to discover. And this journey, the one of understanding your own body, of reclaiming confidence, of functioning the way you know you're capable of, can completely transform the way you live. Not tomorrow, not all at once, but consistently, gradually, the way real changes actually happen. And when that happens, you'll know.